Right now, someone with less skill than you is being treated like royalty because they walk differently, because they hold silence like a weapon, because when they enter a room, the atmosphere shifts before they even speak. Meanwhile, you try to prove yourself with words, with explanations, with effort, and the more you speak, the less they listen. The more you try, the less they respect you. Machiavelli knew this centuries ago. Respect is not earned through kindness. It is not given through hard work. It is commanded through presence, through the unspoken language of power that makes people feel your authority before you ever open your mouth. This video is not about charisma. It is not about being liked. This is about becoming the kind of man who enters a space and everyone recalibrates themselves around him, not because he demanded it, but because his silence, his stillness, his stare made it inevitable. Watch closely, because from this moment forward, your words will no longer be your power. Your presence will be. You weren't born to beg for attention. You were made to command it. Let's begin. Most men believe respect comes from what they say, from being articulate, from being impressive, from filling every silence with clever words. That is the first lie, because words are cheap. Anyone can talk, anyone can explain, anyone can justify. But silence, controlled, deliberate, unbothered silence, that is rare, that is threatening. That is power. Machiavelli understood that the man who speaks constantly is predictable. His emotions are visible. His desperation is obvious. His need for approval leaks through every sentence. But the man who speaks only when necessary, who lets others fill the void while he observes, that man becomes a mystery, and mystery creates fear. Fear creates respect. Think about the most powerful people you have ever encountered. Not the loud, not the ones who dominated conversation, but the ones who barely spoke, the ones whose presence was so heavy that even their silence commanded attention. When they finally did speak, the room leaned in, not because their words were magic, but because their scarcity made every word count. That is the game. You do not win respect by talking more. You win it by making people wonder what you are thinking, by making them afraid of what you might say, by making your silence louder than their noise. Here is the first rule. Stop filling every gap. Stop explaining yourself. Stop trying to be understood. When someone insults you, do not argue. When someone questions you, do not defend. Let the silence sit there. Let them drown in it, because silence forces people to project. They start imagining what you were thinking. They start questioning themselves. They start fearing they crossed a line, and in that fear, you gain control. Most men panic in silence. They think it makes them look weak, awkward, uncertain, so they rush to speak, to laugh, to smooth things over. But that is exactly what makes them forgettable. The man who can sit in uncomfortable silence without flinching is the man who owns the interaction, because silence is not emptiness. Silence is dominant. It says, I do not need to justify myself to you. It says, your opinion does not move. It says, I am comfortable in my own power, and you are not. Now here is the twist. This does not mean you become mute. It means you become selective. You speak when it serves you. You speak when your words will land with weight. You speak when silence has already done its work. And when you do speak, you speak like someone who expects to be obeyed, not through volume, but through certainty, through tone, through finality. Because respect does not come from what you say. It comes from how unmoved you are by everything around you. Powerful men do not arrive loudly. They arrive with gravity, not through their voice, but through the way they occupy space, the way they move, the way they stand, the way they look at people without rushing to smile, without seeking approval, without flinching under judgment. You think presence is about being tall or physically imposing. It is not about certainty. It is about moving like you already own the room, even if no one knows your name yet. Machiavelli saw this in the courts of kings. The ones who truly ruled were not always the ones with the crown. Sometimes it was the man who stood in the corner, still, silent, watching. And when he moved, everyone noticed, not because he announced himself, but because his stillness made his movement significant. That is the power of controlled energy. You do not waste it on nervous gestures, on fidgeting, on seeking validation through body language. You hold it. You let it build. And when you release it, even in the smallest action, people feel it. Here is the second rule. Slow down. Everything, your walk, your gestures, your reactions. Most men move like they are apologizing for existing. They rush. They step aside. They shrink themselves to make room for others. But you must do the opposite. You take up space, not aggressively, but naturally. You walk slower than everyone else, not because you are lazy, but because you are in no hurry. Predators do not sprint unless they are striking. Until then, they move with calm, with patience, with certainty. When you walk into a room, do not scan for approval. Do not look around nervously trying to read the energy. You observe, but your face reveals nothing. Your body language says, I belong here. And if I do not, I will make it mine. You do not enter spaces to fit in. You enter to shift the atmosphere. And that shift happens not through force, but through contrast. While others rush, you are slow. While others talk, you are silent. While others seek attention, you withhold it. And in that contrast, you become the focal point. Your posture speaks before your mouth. Stand like someone who has nothing to prove. Shoulders back, spine straight, chin level, not puffed up like insecurity trying to look big, but grounded like a man who has already decided he is enough. When you sit, do not collapse into the chair. Sit deliberately, spread out, if the space allows it, not to dominate others, but to show you are comfortable claiming your territory. Most men shrink themselves to be polite, but politeness is not respect. Polite is submission dressed as manners. Here is what happens when you move with this kind of presence. People start calibrating to you. They adjust their tone. They become more careful with their words. They start seeking your approval instead of you seeking theirs. Why? Because you have created psychological weight. You have made yourself the standard in the room without ever saying you are. And once that happens, respect is no longer something you chase. It is something people give you automatically because denying it feels uncomfortable. But presence alone is not enough, because eventually people will test you. They will push boundaries. They will try to see if your silence is strength or just fear. And this is where most men fail. They think presence means never react. They think power means tolerating disrespect. That is weakness disguised as composure. The Machiavellian mind knows when to strike, and when it does, it is surgical, cold, final. You do not need to raise your voice to destroy someone. You do not need to argue. You do not need to explain. When someone disrespects you, you pause. You let them finish, and then you respond with one of two moves. The first move is the cold redirect. Someone insults you. You do not defend. You do not get emotional. You just look at them for a moment longer than comfortable and say something like, "Interesting, I see." And then you move on. You dismiss it by refusing to acknowledge it as valid. That dismissal is more crushing than any comeback because it signals their words have no weight with you. The second move is the strategic exit. Someone pushes too far. You do not explode. You do not lecture them. You just withdraw your presence. You stop engaging. You remove access. And you do it without explanation, because explaining is weakness. Explaining is seeking closure. But the man who just disappears without a word leaves a void that haunts people. They start questioning themselves. They start wondering what they did wrong. They start trying to repair something you never gave them permission to break in the first place. That is control. But what he really meant was this: it is better to be respected than tolerated. And respect comes not from being nice, but from being immovable, from being the kind of man who does not bend under pressure, who does not flinch under criticism, who does not collapse when tested. You are not trying to be cruel. You are simply refusing to be soft. And in a world full of men who apologize for existing, the one who does not becomes a giant. Here is the third rule: master the stare. Your eyes are your most powerful weapon, not in an aggressive way, but in a penetrating way. When someone speaks to you, hold eye contact just a little longer than they expect. Do not look away first. Do not blink excessively. Do not soften your gaze to make them comfortable. Let them feel the weight of your attention. Most people cannot handle sustained eye contact. It makes them nervous. It makes them feel exposed. And in that nervousness, you gain dominance. But there is a difference between staring and glaring. Glaring is aggression. Glaring is insecurity, trying to intimidate. Staring, real staring, is calm observation. You are not trying to scare them. You are studying them. You are seeing through them. And when people feel like you see more than they want to reveal, they become cautious. They become respect because they realize you are not someone who can be fooled. Now combine this with stillness. When someone is talking, do not nod along like a puppet. Do not react with exaggerated expressions. Just be still. Let them speak into your silence. Let them wonder if you agree, if you are impressed, if you even care. That uncertainty keeps them working for your approval. And the moment someone is working for your approval, you have already won. Because now they are performing for you. Now they are trying to impress you. Now they are in your frame, not the other way around. But here is where it gets darker. You must also learn to read people faster than they can read you. Because respect is not just about how you present yourself. It is about how you respond to what others reveal. Machiavelli knew that most people are transparent. They leak their intentions through their body language, through their tone, through the words they choose. The man who can decode these signals before others even realize they are sending them has an unfair advantage. Watch their eyes. Do they avoid yours? That is submission. Do they hold yours too aggressively? That is insecurity, trying to prove itself. Do they glance away and then back? That is calculation. They are testing you. Watch their hands. Are they fidgeting? That is nervousness. Are they crossed? That is defensiveness. Are they open? That is either honesty or a well-practiced lie. Watch their feet. Are they pointed toward you? They are engaged. Are they pointed toward the exit? They want to leave. Are they shifting weight constantly? They are uncomfortable. Most men miss these signals because they are too busy worrying about what to say next. But you are not most men. You watch, you absorb, you say nothing. And while they are trying to figure you out, you have already catalogued their weaknesses, their insecurities, their tells. That is the power of observation. That is the power of silence. You become the predator in every interaction because you see what they do not. Here is the fourth rule. Control your reaction. This is where most men lose respect. Someone says something provocative. Someone challenges them. Someone disrespects them. And they react immediately. They defend. They explain. They get emotional. And in that reaction, they reveal their weakness. They show that words can reach them, that opinions can shake them, that they are still seeking validation from people who do not matter. But the man who commands respect does not react. He responds. And there is a massive difference. Reacting is emotional, impulsive, defensive. Responding is calculated, deliberate, strategic. When someone tries to provoke you, you pause. You let the silence stretch. You let them sit in the discomfort of their own words. And then, if you choose to respond, you do so from a place of control, not emotion. You might say something simple. You might say nothing. But whatever you do, it is a choice, not a reflex. This level of self-control is terrifying to others because it means you are not like them. They are ruled by their feelings. You are ruled by your mind. They are slaves to their impulses. You are the master of yours. And when people realize they cannot make you react, they stop trying to test you. They start respecting you because they realize you operate on a different level, a level they cannot reach. Machiavelli warned that the man who cannot control himself will always be controlled by others. And that is the brutal truth. If someone can make you angry, they own your anger. If someone can make you defensive, they own your insecurity. If someone can make you desperate for approval, they own your entire sense of self. But if no one can move you, if no one can provoke you, if no one can make you break composure, then you are untouchable, and untouchable men are the ones who command respect without ever asking for it. Now let us talk about scarcity, because respect is also about access. The more available you are, the less valuable you become. Think about it. The friend who always answers immediately, who always makes time, who always prioritizes you over himself. Do you respect him? Or do you take him for granted? The truth is, most people do not value what is always there. They value what is hard to reach. They value what requires effort. They value what feels rare. Here is the fifth rule, not absent, but selective. You do not always respond to messages right away. You do not always make yourself available. You do not always show up when invited. Not because you are playing games, but because your time is genuinely valuable. And when people feel that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee, they start treating you differently. They start respecting your time. They start valuing your attention. They start seeking your approval. This works in every area of life. In friendships, the one who is always available becomes the one who gets used. But the one who has boundaries, who says no, who disappears for days without explanation, that is the one people chase. In relationships, the partner who is always there, always accommodating, always bending becomes boring. But the one who maintains mystery, who has his own life, who does not revolve around the other person, that is the one who keeps attraction alive. In business, the consultant who is always free is seen as desperate, but the one who is booked months in advance is seen as elite. Scarcity creates value, and value creates respect. So you must train yourself to withdraw strategically, not out of spite, not out of manipulation, but because you genuinely have priorities that do not revolve around other people's needs. You have goals. You have standards. You have a life that is bigger than seeking validation from anyone. And when people see that, when they realize you are not chasing them, they start chasing you. But scarcity must be paired with consistency, because if you are unpredictable in a chaotic way, people will not respect you. They will just think you are unreliable. The key is to be consistently selective. When you do show up, you show up fully. When you do give your time, it is focused, intentional, valuable, but you do not give it freely. You do not give it to everyone. You give it to those who have earned it. And that discrimination is what makes your presence worth something. Here is the sixth rule. Never explain yourself. This is one of the hardest habits to break, because most men are trained to justify their choices, to defend their decisions, to make sure everyone understands their reasoning. But every time you explain yourself, you weaken your position. You signal that you need approval. You signal that you are unsure. You signal that you care what they think. Powerful men do not explain. They decide and move forward. If someone questions them, they do not launch into a defense. They just say something like, "That's my decision," or they say nothing at all, because explaining is asking for permission retroactively, and the man who asks for permission is not the man who commands respect. When you stop explaining, something shifts. People stop questioning you. They start assuming you know something they do not. They start respecting your choices even when they disagree. Why? Because certainty is contagious. And the man who is certain does not need to justify himself. Now, let us address the elephant in the room. What if people think you are arrogant? And even what if they call you cold? What if they say you have changed? Let them, because those are not criticisms. Those are confirmations. When people say you are arrogant, what they really mean is you are no longer seeking their approval. When they say you are cold, what they really mean is you are no longer emotionally available for them to exploit. When they say you have changed, what they really mean is you are no longer the person they could control. Machiavelli knew this. He knew that the moment you stop being agreeable, people will try to shame you back into submission. They will use social pressure, guilt, manipulation, but you must see through it. Because their discomfort is not your problem. Their need for you to stay small is not your responsibility. You are not here to make others comfortable. You are here to command respect, and respect does not come from being liked. It comes from being undeniable. Here is the seventh and final rule. Build yourself in silence. Do not announce your goals. Do not share your plans. Do not seek validation for your progress. Just work. Just build. Just become. And let your results speak. Because the man who constantly talks about what he is going to do is the man no one takes seriously. But the man who disappears for 6 months and returns transformed, that is the man people respect. That is the man who commands attention without saying a word. Your transformation should be so visible that people cannot ignore it. Your discipline should be so consistent that people start wondering what you know that they do not. Your presence should be so refined that people feel the difference the moment you walk in. And none of this requires you to say a single word. It just requires you to become the kind of man who no longer needs to. You have now learned what most men will never understand. That respect is not earned through words, through explanations, through trying to be impressive. It is commanded through silence, through presence, through stillness, through the refusal to react, through scarcity, through certainty. You have learned that the less you speak, the more power you hold. That the slower you move, the more attention you command. That the less you explain, the more people assume you are in control. You are no longer the man who begs for respect. You are the man who takes it, not through force, not through arrogance, but through the quiet, undeniable gravity of someone who has mastered himself. You walk into rooms and the energy shifts. You sit in silence and people feel your weight. You stare without flinching and others look away first. You speak only when necessary, and every word lands like a command. This is not theory. This is your new operating system. From this moment forward, you do not chase. You do not explain. You do not react. You observe. You calculate. You move with purpose. You speak with finality. You command without asking, not because you demanded it, but because you made it impossible not to. Machiavelli once said that men judge more by the eyes than by the hands. What he meant was this: people do not respect what you say. They respect what they see. They respect the man who looks untouchable, the man who seems unshakable, the man who moves like he already owns the outcome. That man is you now. So like this video if you are done trying to earn respect through words. Subscribe if you are ready to command it through presence. Because this is not self-help, this is war. And you just became a silent weapon.